Well,
I couldn't hear most of what you said.
oh, sorry.
It's cold. I just wanted
That
to
is
let you know.
cold.
It's cold. Oh,
If-
I'm not cold, but I couldn't hear you. I just wanted to let you know.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay. All right. Well, it says here that when I am healed, I am not healed alone. I sent out a text a little bit earlier. I don't know how many got it. But I said, hate is a symptom of contagious mental illness. Minds are joined. Minds are joined. And so the lesson for today, when I'm healed, I am not healed alone, is talking about minds being joined. It doesn't mean that when we are healed from some physical disease that suddenly a whole bunch of other people are healed from that physical disease. It actually could manifest that way, but that's really not what it's talking about. What it's talking about is that the sickness that was referred to in the last couple of lessons, but this any time that we are sick, that ultimately all sickness is a mental illness. And it's very difficult to accept when there's pain in the body. Very difficult and once we do accept it, it's very easy to then blame ourselves. Well, if it's all in my mind, what's wrong with my mind? Well, our minds are sick. That's the point. The point is that we're in the midst of group mental illness. And our individual symptoms are just like manifestations of that. They may seem a little bit different to us than the other person. And if you notice, if you see people who really are quite disturbed, who apparently are quite disturbed in the world, in your travels around the world, that the more disturbed they are, the more severe their sense of separation is. So in other words, what I'm saying is the more self-centered we are, the sicker we are. I've noticed it in myself and I see it in others. The more disconnected we are from each other, the more ill we appear to be. But actually, it's just an appearance. Because all of us, thinking that we're separate from God, have this ultimate insanity. We think we're separate from God. That's the deal. And so when it says, when I'm healed, I'm not healed alone, what it's saying is that as I move out of that self-centeredness, I take others with me. Well, you can see what happens. I mean, just even on a surface level, what happens is, as we move out of self-centeredness, we begin to interact with others in more loving and kind ways. And that affects them. And so even at that surface level, we see that there is an effect from our cause being moving upwards in consciousness, or as Ken Wapnick said, moving back up this ladder out of the pit that we have dug for ourselves. As we move up, we're moving others up with us. Minds are joined. This doesn't mean everybody's coming at the same pace or at the same time, but just be sure that every loving thought goes out to touch and heal a part of every other living thing. So this is the mindset to have. This is the mindset to have. And the reason it doesn't even actually have to be true. Somebody could just tell me, you're crazy, this isn't how it works. But the fact of the matter is, when I begin to center myself in kind and loving thoughts, my mental state improves. That's really, and since my life and my experience in the world are everything that I know, so it would seem to me that would be a good thing. So I tell people it's okay with me if actually ultimately I'm proved to be wrong, because I would rather be happy than right. This is that ultimate question that was asked very early on in the course. That's the question to ask yourself anytime you're upset and in a conflict, is just ask, would I rather be happy or would I rather be right? And of course, we answer right away. We answer, well, of course I'd rather be happy. But then we realize the fact of the matter is we most of the time we'd rather be right. We'd rather stick to our position and show that we are correct and the other person is wrong. It seems very precious to us to be right. And of course it all links up with that prevalent thought that says it's not my fault. No matter what, it's not my fault. That it's all my fault. But wait, it's not my fault. It's like schizophrenic behavior that we're all exhibiting, right? So this says today's idea remains the central thought on which salvation rests. Now salvation, what's talking about here, salvation, it's not talking about salvation in the way you may have heard it before. It's just talking about a state of safety. That this idea remains the central thought upon which our safety rests. For healing is the opposite of all the world's ideas which dwell on sickness and on separate states. Sickness is a retreat from others, a shutting off of joining. It becomes a door that closes on a separate self and keeps it isolated and alone. So, it's not talking about conscious thought. It's not talking about we consciously choose to be sick so that we can, go into our room and, we don't consciously choose to be hurting so that we can be a martyr. None of this is conscious. What it's saying is that at a subconscious level, this is our defense system. Sickness reinforces separation from life. Now, the Course never says anywhere that you shouldn't take medicine. It says that if you believe in the medicine, take the medicine. But the point of this whole thing is to change our minds. To change our minds. And to change our minds at a deep level. And this is actually the purpose of any spiritual path, is to go from one way of looking at things to another. And all spiritual paths that I know of are leading to at least oneness. They may not be leading to God because that particular path doesn't believe in God, but they're leading to a state of harmony and unity and oneness. And so my approach with this, I used to be a firebrand and I wanted to change the world, and in my teenage years I was out in the street marching for different things, and I think I don't think there's anything wrong with that, except that the only thing wrong with it is that I actually thought that I could change the world through outer activity. And I'm not saying that outer activity is not required, but in order to change the world, we have to change the world from the inside out. The way we see things. In order to heal the problems in the world, we first have to heal the problems within ourselves. And the world just kind of seems to come along with it. So, sickness is isolation, for it seems to keep oneself apart from all the rest, to suffer what others do not feel. Now, I'm just thinking about this, and I know that sometimes we're so sick, I feel so badly, hurt, and it's like nobody knows. Nobody knows how bad this is, right? You don't understand. And I'm not talking about just physical pain. I'm talking about emotional pain. All of that. Nobody. And see, this is the essence of separation. Is to say, I am all alone in this experience. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Nobody knows but Jesus. Everybody knows. Everybody knows because everybody experiences it. Everybody experiences it at one time or another, and they tell themselves nobody knows. But everybody knows. Everybody knows what it's like to be separate. Everybody knows what it's like to be lonely. Everybody knows what it's like to be cut off from life and to feel totally isolated. Everybody knows. So, everybody can be healed. But we can't actually worry about healing everybody. We first change our own perception about what's going on, and then these other things begin to change. It's so strange. I mean, I know a lot of people here have had this experience that once the mind begins to change, it seems like the world changes. It seems like other people are different than what they were before. They're not. It's the way we're seeing it. It's always the way we're seeing it. So the meditation that we just did is the idea that what's happened in our separation is that we have forgotten that we are actually part of life. I mean, I'm talking about integral part of life. I'm talking about we cannot be separated from the rest of life, or if you wish, we cannot be separated from God. So we've forgotten. And in order to remember that we are all one, in order to remember that we are really in harmony already, in order to be healed from whatever it is that we think is wrong with us, we have to remember that we're part of God. We have to remember that we're part of creation. But in order to remember, we have to forget. We have to forget all the grievances. We have to forget all of the reasons why we think we're separate from other people. We have to forget about all of the various things that we think that they've done to us. Just forget it. And this is why I really wanted to make the point about forgiveness is there is no forgiveness without forgetfulness. It's just a shining on. It's just saying, well, you hurt me, but I'm going to let it go. Where it actually has to be forgotten. Nothing happened. This is the refrain. Every time it comes to mind, nothing happened. Nothing really happened. Now, this is not an unfortunate denial. It's not saying that we didn't have an experience in our life that seemed painful. So when we're ill, mentally or physically, to say that we're not experiencing it, that would be an unfortunate denial. But it still is not real in terms of spirit, which is what we really are. And that's the remembrance. To remember that we're part of God is to remember that we're part of spirit. And so the first recognition that there's an unpleasant thing happening, that's good. That's healthy. That needs to be done. We can't just push it aside. Say this is my experience right now is I feel put upon. My experience right now is I have chronic pain. My experience right now is that I've got the flu. My experience right now is that I seem to be coming down with a cold. But then I tell myself, but I am not a body. I'm not a body. So really nothing has happened to me. Nothing is happening to me in terms of this discomfort. Bring the disorder to the light. Bring the disorder to the light. So it goes on. The world obeys the laws that sickness serves, but healing operates apart from them. So healing, the healing that it's talking about here in this reading is not of the world. It is not part of the physical, material world. The healing that's being talked about here is all internal. So it is impossible that anyone be healed alone. In sickness must he be apart and separate, but healing is his own decision to be one again and to accept his self capitalized with all its parts intact and unassailed. In sickness does his self appear to be dismembered and without the unity that gives it life. But healing is accomplished as he sees the body has no power to attack the universal oneness of God's children. So the body. The body is a problem. The body's a problem. It's always reporting all sorts of things. It's always reporting. It's reporting It's reporting needs and wants and disorders and offenses and fear. Hate is a symptom of a contagious mental illness. So we see this happening over and over again. And here's how the seeds are passed so many ways. We see it in all the news stories. We see it in our interactions with others. And the reason that I said it's contagious is it is so easy for other people to get us really ramped up and going. It's so, and even the word itself is so easy. Sometimes we will if we get really upset. Seldom do we say that, oh, I hate that person. I know, sometimes we do. But it's so easy for the word to come off of our tongue. We say, I hate that. My grandfather was a Baptist minister, and his family was from Germany, and he didn't speak English until he went to school. They just spoke German in the house. And he would say whenever us kids would say anything about we hate this or we hate that, he just said, you daresn't hate. Daresn't is not a word, but you understand. You daresn't hate. And what he was saying was, he was not saying like it's a sin that you're going to be punished for. He was actually saying it is a mistake that is the punishment in itself. And this is why not to. Because it sets up a state of separation in the mind. It sets up, and we see it happening in society. We see it happening in society against society. We see it happening in nation against nation. These people are different from us. So therefore we need to be afraid of them. Immediately upon thinking that we need to be afraid, hate comes. It's an immediate consequence of fear, of those folks that we don't understand. And then it becomes defense. How do I protect myself from that person, from this person, from those crazy people over there who I have no idea what they're doing? And then we have those are leaders who have learned that this is a very easy thing to use to stay in power and cover up all the other baloney that's going on that we really should be worried about a lot more. Keep you thinking about this reason to be afraid and these reasons to hate each other so that you don't notice that all of this other crazy stuff is going on and total mismanagement of our affairs is occurring on a daily basis. So, look, if you want to be successful in politics, it's an easy lesson to learn, right? Find an enemy. Find an enemy. Get on a soapbox. Start talking against them. It's easy. It's easy. And because we're in the body and separate and susceptible to fear, we jump right on board. And it's interesting how it's a symbiotic relationship. One person gets up and begins to rail against a group of people or an organization, and then it gives rise to someone on the other side who can then rise up and speak against them. And they actually work together. They're like partners. They're like partners in fear. They may never even speak to each other. But each feeds off the other because their constituency gets fired up over what this guy says, and this constituency gets fired up over what... Yes, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It just keeps the conflict going. When I am healed, I am not healed alone. When I forget this offense that this person is trying to present to me, when I forget the offense that my own fear is trying to present to me, I no longer participate in that conflict. Now I'm not amenable. Now I can't be manipulated. Now I see much more clearly what's really going on and what the real issues are and say, wait a minute, hold on, stop talking about that. What about this? So, did anybody see the headline on the newspaper yesterday? Cops kill naked riflemen. What? I never saw it. I bet you that nobody in here has ever seen that headline before. Right? First time ever. I mean, the person who wrote the headline was going, yes! We never have seen anything like this before. Now, very justified. I mean, it's easy. You read the article, it's very justified. I mean, the guy's shooting the rifle right over here. It was just a few blocks away. His wife called the police and said, hey, my husband's out in the backyard. He's naked and he's shooting off his gun. Come and help me. So they came, and when they came, he ran into the house. And then he runs out onto the porch and he points the rifle and starts shooting. And of course, so my talk here is not saying that in this particular case the police used force that they shouldn't have used. That's not what I'm talking about. What my talk here today is talking about the fear that caused the man to go naked into the backyard with the rifle. The fear that he had is the fear that we have. It just manifested itself in a more serious symptom that day. When I'm healed, I'm not healed alone. When we begin to say we are not going to go along with this anymore, we're not going to go along with people telling us that we need to be afraid. Not going to go along with our own stuff. We're going to say to ourselves when these ridiculous prejudices and fears come to our mind to say to ourselves, I don't want that. That's not what I want. That's not how I want to think anymore. When we start doing that, it touches other minds. When we stop cooperating,